So this is one of the fundamental laws that we'll be covering today, the laws of cause and effect. A couple comments before we get into the actual reading itself. Uh, Rene Descartes, was he the 16th century? Says he was way ahead of the time. To attain the truth in life, we must discard all the ideas we were taught and reconstruct the entire system of our knowledge. And the reason I bring that up is I feel like that's what A Course in Miracles encourages us to do, is to discard the systems of thought of the ego that we were taught and reconstruct our entire system of knowledge based on the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So here, before we get into the reading, I want to illustrate simply as I can, the idea that we're covering today. So this is meant to be an image of earth and heaven. And so the idea of cause and effect can be framed that way. First, there's a heavenly cause, which is the Father, the Creator, is the divine cause of everything, of all creation. And his offspring, we, the sons of God, are the effect of his creative cause. So that is the truth and remains forever the truth. However, there is a counter narrative promoted by the ego, and that would be a reversal of this idea that says that the cause of life on earth is random and chaotic. That's the cause. We have our origins of life are in chaos. And as a result, the effect of that is that illusions, chaotic, random illusions, seem to be our reality. So the takeaway from this is that there's the eternal narrative of the Creator as cause, and there's a counter narrative. So there's two versions of cause and effect here: the earthly or ego version and the heavenly or divine version. So welcome to Miracles on High Plains. My name is Jonica, and our reader today is David S.
You may still complain about fear, but you nevertheless persist in making yourself fearful. I have already indicated that you cannot ask me to release you from fear. I know it does not exist, but you do not. If I intervened between your thoughts and their results, I would be tampering with the basic law of cause and effect, the most fundamental law there is. I would hardly help you if I depreciated the power of your own thinking. This would be in direct opposition to the purpose of this course.
Mm-hmm. So why is it that Christ cannot take away your fears? Because our fears are the reactions that we choose to situations in our life. To take that away would be to interfere with the most fundamental law there is regarding the power of your mind to freely choose for yourself. So, as we look into the basic law of cause and effect, there are going to be a number of attributes or corollaries that stem from that. The power for you to freely choose for yourself what you believe is one of the corollaries here. And therefore, this has widespread implications, and the entire section that we read today is an elaboration on those implications. Both implications for when we choose poorly, as well as implications for when we choose in line with life and love. We'll go on.
It is much more helpful to remind you that you do not guard your thoughts carefully enough. You may feel that at this point it would take a miracle to enable you to do this, which is perfectly true. You are not used to miracle-minded thinking, but you can be trained to think that way. All miracle workers need that kind of training. I cannot let you leave your mind unguarded, or you will not be able to help me. Miracle working entails a full realization of the power of thought in order to avoid miscreation. Otherwise, a miracle will be necessary to set the mind itself straight, a circular process that would not foster the time collapse for which the miracle was intended. The miracle worker must have genuine respect for true cause and effect as a necessary condition for the miracle to occur.
David, your microphone is jostling around a little bit. Do you think you
It is?
could attach it more securely? So as you move about, it creates a little audio noise.
Is it doing it now as I'm talking?
Yes.
Well, then it must be this. How about if I just, is it
I think,
still?
I think, yeah, I think it just does it when you move your head, or, not that.
What about now? Is it okay now?
Now it's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Sorry.
you. No, it's all right. I just wanted to catch it early on. Okay, so we do not guard our thoughts carefully enough. Mind training is about watching your mind, taking responsibility for the contents of your mind, and then recognizing when your mind goes down the dark path and choosing to reverse course, to undo that, and choose for the light. And so that requires that we watch our minds so that when we do make a wrong turn, we don't continue along in that direction, but we recognize it and correct. All miracle workers need that kind of training. So it is a requirement, a condition. In order to work miracles, we must train our minds and guard our thoughts so that we do not empower our own illusions and try to make them real in our mind. Otherwise, we'll not be able to help in the miracle process. So, miracle working entails a full realization of the power of your mind, a genuine respect for true cause and effect, which is a necessary condition for the miracle to occur. Now, when we talk about true cause and effect, what we mean again is that your mind is very powerful. You were given the power to create with your mind, and therefore the use of your mind, it has implications. And if it's to be used for light and love, then it must be committed and consistent in that usage so that we don't fall off the true path. And so this will be a condition for necessary for the miracle to occur. The workbook lessons is the training manual for you to learn gradually this skill set of watching your mind, recognizing when an illusion has grabbed your attention, and learning to let it go and turn the spirit instead. Go on.
Both miracles and fear come from thoughts. If you are not free to choose one, you would also not be free to choose the other. By choosing the miracle, you have rejected fear, if only temporarily. You have been fearful of everyone and everything. You are afraid of God, of me, and of yourself. You have misperceived or miscreated us and believe in what you have made. You would not have done this if you were not afraid of your own thoughts.
Yes, so this is one of the profound insights of A Course in Miracles is that thoughts and feelings arise in our mind, and then in grabbing onto them and being mesmerized by them and following that path, we follow ourselves down into a path of fear. And this is the equivalent of being afraid of your own thoughts. And it's not something that a person would generally be happy to acknowledge, that we are creating our own fearful thoughts by believing in our own misperceptions. And these misperceptions go on to form an entire view of the world. It becomes a misperception of yourself, a misperception of others, a misperception of the world, and even a misperception of God. And so the concept is that the power of the mind, when untrained and confused by illusions, will continue to go on and will not be able to limit the scope of its misperception. It'll eventually come to encompass everything. We call it your world or your worldview. And so this is all consequence of being free to choose. And not be a slave. It's a gift to be free to decide for yourself. But that same gift, when used unconsciously and without understanding, can be used to generate much sorrow and sadness. Again, to generate your own fears and thus live a life where you're afraid of your own thoughts. Just as a little aside, I know that in my 20s, particularly, I was aware of it. I had a lot of what is sometimes called free floating anxiety. Free floating anxiety is not necessarily attached to any one thing. It's just kind of a generalized fear. And then whatever happens to come along in any moment, my anxiety attaches to it. It was a free floating anxiety. And so this is but one example of being afraid of our own thoughts. We'll go on.
The fearful must miscreate because they misperceive creation, essentially miscreators. When you miscreate, you are in pain. The cause and effect principle now becomes a real expediter, though only temporarily. Actually, cause is a term properly belonging to God, and his effect is his Son. This entails a set of cause and effect relationships totally different from those you introduce into miscreation. The fundamental conflict in this world, then, is between creation and miscreation. All fear is implicit in the second, and all love in the first. The conflict is therefore one between love and fear.
Mhm. So again, these are the fundamentals, the foundations upon which the Course in Miracles is built. And so they are really worthy of your study. Otherwise, we wind up trying to understand the additional teachings without a clarity on the fundamentals, and confusion can result. So let's break this down. First of all, to reemphasize what we said at the very beginning, there is a cause and effect relationship on the heavenly level, and we'll capitalize cause for divine cause and divine effect. And it's a relationship between the Father and his sons. And that relationship is totally different than the one that is perceived in the illusions of time as little causes, chaos as a cause, and fear and illusions as an effect. Very different. So whenever we read cause and effect in the Course, we have to discern within the context. Are they referring to the true cause and effect relationship, or are we referring to the illusion? And so let's talk again about our being afraid of our own thoughts, being in a state of mind, which we call fear. In that state, you cannot acquire the truth. But what you can do with your mind is empower illusions to seem real to you in that moment. It's a misperception of the situation of life, of creation. And miscreating is pain. Now, we're not talking about physical pain. We're talking about mental conflicts. I don't know who I am. I don't know why I'm here on earth or what the meaning of life is. I don't know what love is all about. I'm desperate I feel empty inside and a need to go out and try to find something to fill that emptiness. This is a despair. It's a type of unhappiness. It's a type of pain and suffering. And so, in that situation, pay attention to how you feel and recognize that I must have made a poor choice. I must have made a mistake, but I am not imprisoned by those choices. I can change my mind. And so the principle, which I find to be, for me, this is worth memorizing. The fundamental conflict in this world is between using your mind to create or to miscreate. And what the creative part of your being is your eternal self. It's your spiritual self. It is always with you and is unchanged from the beginning. So whenever part of your mind is used to miscreate, it introduces a conflict with your creative part. And so this is the fundamental conflict of human existence. This is the problem. Using part of the power of your mind in opposition to your higher self, to your loving self, in opposition to life itself, and employing a set of illusions and trying to make them into your own miscreation. And love and fear follow from those two different states. And so we typically in the course make reference to the love and fear, but I think technically more correct terms would be to create or to miscreate. So while that may not all be perfectly clear to you right now, I would recommend that you take note. The fundamental conflict within the human experience is using your mind either for good or using it for something else, which is inherently less than good, to miscreate. And as it says, as said earlier, whatever it is that you miscreate, whether or not you use your mind to believe somebody else is out to get you, or you believe that you are unlovable, or whatever judgments about the world, those effects, those illusions don't really matter because they're illusions. What matters is that your mind is making this fundamental error and not realizing that you're using your mind to miscreate. Okay, so this is how cause and effect shows up. I should say I'm pointing to this one here, but this is how cause and effect shows up in a realm of miscreation, using your mind to create an illusion and not even knowing that you are the source of your own pain.
It has already been said that you believe you cannot control fear because you yourself made it, and your belief in it seems to render it out of your control. Yet, any attempt to resolve the error through attempting the mastery of fear is useless. In fact, it asserts the power of fear by the very assumption that it need be mastered. The true resolution rests entirely on mastery through love. In the interim, however, the sense of conflict is inevitable, since you have placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist. Nothing and everything cannot coexist. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is really nothing, and love is everything. Whenever light enters darkness, the darkness is abolished. What you believe is true for you.
Mm-hmm. Power of your mind enables you to choose what you believe, and then that belief seems to be true to you. It may not seem to be true to anybody else, but it will seem to be true to you. This first sentence is really our target here. It's a widely prevailing belief that you cannot, this is an error, but this is what is widely believed. You cannot control fear. Why? Because it originates in your own mind. It seems to you, the things that originate in your mind seem to be true. And because you believe they are true, you give them your power, your faith, and thus it seems to take on a power of its own. To the individual, it seems as though the world really is that way. It seems, so if you believe, for instance, let's take an extreme view of someone who believes that the end of the world is going to be next month, that it's prophesized, or, some kind of belief that says the world will end next month. And I mean it in the tragic sense of the world will end. Well, that belief will, you give it your power, and it will seem to render it out of your control. It will seem to be as if this is the way the world is. There's nothing I can do about it. And this is the widely prevailing belief that there's nothing I can do about these fears. And that's the point of error that must be corrected, is that you can change your beliefs. You are responsible for them. Then we get to the question of, but how? And many people, for millennia of time, people have tried to figure out how to alter the mind's belief in fear. The Greeks were very dedicated to trying to figure out how to overcome fear in the mind. So it goes way back. What the Course says is attempting to become a master of fear is a futile effort, because in so focusing on the intricacies of fear and how it works, what it does is it asserts power of the fear in your mind, which is the fundamental error, believing that those fears have power. Therefore, the Course teaches a different approach, and that is you must become a master of love through forgiveness, peace, and love. You learn to overcome and dismiss all fear by mastering the power of forgiveness, peace, and love. And this really works. And the testimony to that, of which we've heard many people in these meetings testify, that the things that used to trouble me the most now mean nothing to me at all. I'm no longer troubled by them. I was sharing with someone, I used to, like many people, have flare-ups in traffic when people would drive and do things that were that I reacted to with upset. I would lose my peace, my tranquility in it, so much so that I didn't want to drive even. And now those things don't bother me. I don't say I'm perfect at it, but rarely do I have anything upset modes. And if it does, it only lasts like a second or two. And then I realize I'm the one that's generating all that anxiety, all that anger, and I let it go. So this is an example of mastering the desire to love and forgive instead of empowering, asserting the power of fear in one's life. So another definition for a miscreation is believing in the power of what does not exist. And that's what creates pain, is believing in the power of what does not exist. So I've borrowed a couple sentences from another version of the Course right here in yellow, because I think it helps with the transition into the next paragraph.
The unwillingness to let one's darkness be seen or to submit error to light is a way of denying that the separation ever occurred. Like all pseudo solutions, this kind of distorted thinking is very creative, but false. In this sense, the separation has occurred, and to deny it is merely to use denial inappropriately. However, to concentrate on error is only a further error. The initial corrective procedure is to recognize temporarily that there is a problem, but only as an indication that immediate correction is needed. This establishes a state of mind in which the atonement can be accepted without delay. It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately no compromise is possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up. It only seems to be abolished by degrees because time itself involves intervals that do not exist. Miscreation made this necessary as a corrective device.
Mm-hmm. So in this paragraph here, it breaks down in detail the procedure that any miracle worker goes through that finds some illusion has crossed your mind. You may have temporarily bought into it, and how to reverse that process. This is one way of describing it. So we're going to go into it in some detail because this is what we need to learn to replace love with fear. So let's start from the lowest level of confusion, where one is unwilling to acknowledge your illusions, your darkness, the unwillingness to let light, darkness be seen, or to submit error to light. That's a way of going around and perpetuating the past by being in a state of denial about miscreations. Denial, we referred to it in the previous section, of defiling the altar, of placing our own illusion, our own idols on the altar, of denying that and thus perpetuating those errors. And so those would be called pseudo solutions. It may be clever, but it's false. So we're talking about the separation in the context of your own individual experience with some illusion that arises in your mind that for a moment grabs your attention and you're tempted to follow that where it goes. To concentrate, well, let's just say, we don't want to deny that the illusion is false, that it's there. To do that is merely to use denial inappropriately. But to concentrate on your error is not going to help either. So we're talking about now a person who's had an illusion and is willing to acknowledge that, to admit your mistakes and correct them. So what is the procedure? To temporarily recognize, oh, problem, yellow light, as an indication, but only not to scold yourself and condemn yourself, but as an indication that it's time to course correct. I use a sailboat analogy. It's time to tack. I was on a course that was helpful. I went a little bit too far. It's time to alter course. This establishes a state of mind in which you can accept the atonement without delay, but by first recognizing the problem. There's a problem here. I don't need to continue along on that path, problematic path of believing in illusion. And so time is been given all of us to learn to forgive. Time is a device so that you can learn to let go of your own illusions. Recognize that it was your own mind miscreating, not for the purposes of condemning yourself, but for correcting that error. Time is given to us to learn to correct this common mistake. David, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I had my hand up, but your explanations have resolved any concerns that I had or questions in a way. I didn't quite grasp um, this kind of distorted thinking is very creative, but false.
Yeah.
I didn't understand the the concept of creative
Yeah.
distorted thinking.
Yeah. They use a term elsewhere in referring to something like this as ingenious. Oh, isn't that clever? You can think of it about, oh, I don't want to go there and attack lawyers. You can, in people that are trying to deny the truth,
Mhm.
you can get very clever in all the reasons that are given for perpetuating the lie. So they mean it in that sense, in the miscreative creative sense. Yeah, creative is probably being used in more than one way here, and it can easily be confused. Okay, let's go on. So remember, let's just summarize that one more time because this is the vital procedure. For one, you have to be willing to recognize the problem so it can be solved. And recognizing the problem is just a temporary blip. It doesn't mean that you are bad, irreparable, damaged, sick. It means that you're having an experience which is misleading. So you recognize temporarily there's a problem, not for the purposes of judging yourself. By the way, we do this with others too. Recognize, oh, temporarily they're in a state of mind where they're making it worse for themselves, but that doesn't mean we do that in a sense that they are forever irreparable. It means we recognize temporarily there's a problem so that we can immediately bring correction to it. And that is what I call the divine pause. We're no longer taking the illusion wherever it goes, we're pausing, and that makes it possible for us to turn and reorient towards the atonement, towards the Holy Spirit, and do so without delay.
The statement, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life," needs only one slight correction to be meaningful in this context. He gave it to his only begotten Son. It should especially be noted that God has only one Son. If all his creations are his sons, every one must be an integral part of the whole sonship. The sonship in its oneness transcends the sum of its parts. However, this is obscured as long as any of its parts is missing. That is why the conflict cannot ultimately be resolved until all the parts of the sonship have returned. Only then can the meaning of wholeness in the true sense be understood. Any part of the sonship can believe in error or incompleteness if he so chooses. However, if he does so, he is believing in the existence of nothingness. The correction of this error is the atonement.
Uh-huh. All right. I love this part. David, we talked a long time ago about the totality or the completion versus the incomplete. And this speaks to it. Um, and I had a insight recently that where it all became to me it became very clear. I'll try to explain it with words. I'll do my best to convey with words the insight. So it's based upon principles that are in here. um, and the first principle is that God has only one son. For in other words, creation of all beings were brought create into being in a state of oneness, in a state of perfect unity, one mind, one perfect union of all beings, one son. And everyone must be an integral part of that whole sonship. If any, I use the jigsaw puzzle as an analogy. If any one piece is missing, then you know it right away. It's not complete. It has to have all parts in their proper place. Um, and so this is the heavenly truth. On the earthly or time level, we lose sight of all that and view us, I think the survival, the fittest ethos says every man for himself. It's a dog eat dog world. You've got to do the best for yourself and your loved ones because we're all in conflict with each other, competition with each other. So that's the counter narrative to that. But to stay on the truthful narrative for a moment, um, here's the thing, and it says it right here. Um, the conflict cannot ultimately be resolved until all the parts of the sonship have returned. And here's the insight that I had. Some parts of the sonship have already returned to the original state. There are beings who have already returned home and reunited in a perfect union. And everyone is an integral part of the whole sonship. So we could say that some parts of ourself have already returned home. Now, this is an insight that has to be received by your soul. So try not to struggle with it intellectually, but recognize that because some parts of the sonship are home, parts of yourself are already home. And the separation is the idea that other parts of yourself are not home. All right, so we've got this duality here. And which part of yourself do you identify with is a choice. It's you can identify with the part of yourself that is at home, or you can identify with the part of yourself that seems to be not at home. Well, which is another way of saying you can identify with the part that is separate, or you can identify with the atonement. It's a choice, and most people, before they take the course, will say, I never realized I had a choice. So, well, now you do know that you have a choice. Which part will you identify with? Um, and by identifying with the part that is home, then the meaning of wholeness in the true sense can be understood. By identifying with the part that is seemingly separate, you cannot understand wholeness or totality because individuality, fragmented, separate pieces seems to be the dominant view from the point of view of miscreation and separation. That's a more advanced, I think of it as a more advanced idea, but this is the extension of the idea there's only one sonship. We are all an integral part of the whole sonship. Some parts have already returned, and only by understanding this can the meaning of the wholeness in the true sense be understood. If that doesn't land on you right now, don't worry about it. I just offer that up as a perspective that to be helpful.
I have already briefly spoken about readiness, but some additional points might be helpful here. Readiness is only the prerequisite for accomplishment. The two should not be confused. As soon as a state of readiness occurs, there is usually some degree of desire to accomplish, but it is by no means necessarily undivided. The state does not imply more than a potential for a change of mind.
Mm-hmm. Ready, willing, and able are the fundamental elements of the Great Crusade of listen, learn, do. To be ready, willing, and able to listen, learn, and do. So readiness is what readiness to take this course, readiness to apply it in your life is only the beginning of growth and change. Readiness should not be confused with growth and change and progress. But readiness is essential. As soon as this occurs, then one begins to marshal some of your willpower, some degree of desire to move forward on the path of peace. But that desire, that willingness is by no means necessarily undivided. And this word undivided is key here. What to say is part of you may be willing to move forward on the path of peace, but other parts of you may prefer to hold on to resentments, guilt, and judgment. That would be a divided will. And so the state of readiness implies a potential for a change of mind, but does not imply that it has yet been accomplished. We'll go on.
Confidence cannot develop fully until mastery has been accomplished. We have already attempted to correct the fundamental error that fear can be mastered and have emphasized that the only real mastery is through love. Readiness is only the beginning of confidence. You may think this implies that an enormous amount of time is necessary between readiness and mastery. But let me remind you that time and space are under my control.
So the context here is a continuum that on the low end involves doubt and uncertainty, lack of confidence. And on the high end involves confidence, trust, mastery, certainty. And there's a continuum between them. You can't reach the confidence state until mastery, we're talking about the mastery of love, has been accomplished. The mastery of love gives you confidence not in your little self, but confidence in the laws of forgiveness, healing, and peace and love. So it's confidence in those laws to function in your life when you choose in accordance with those principles. So readiness is just the beginning of the long journey towards faith, trust, and ultimately confidence. And the little mind will say this is going to take several lifetimes. The little mind will lack confidence and imply that you'll never get there in this lifetime. I've heard people say those words, affirming their doubt, lack of confidence. Um, Here's the error. You might think that this implies an enormous amount of time between readiness and mastery, but you're not in this alone. You're not relying on your own inner guidance. You're relying on Christ's vision and the Holy Spirit's principles to teach you. And under those terms, time and space are under Christ's control. And this is where miracles is unique in its ability to collapse the amount of time needed to learn a lesson that might take some people 5 years, 10 years to learn, to forgive someone who they uh, judged as ruining their life. A miracle allows you to do that in a much shorter period of time, collapses time, and thus accelerates. This is the celestial speed up, and thus accelerates the time for us to heal as well as to help others to heal. Um, I want to do a summary before we wrap it up for this session. I'll go over some of the principles. I'll read these, David. Go over some of the principles that we covered today. So we've been talking about what is called a fundamental law in A Course in Miracles. Pay attention when it refers to that. It means it has implications far beyond what you might realize. It's this law of cause and effect. And we are asked to have respect for the true cause and effect in order for miracles to occur. And that is to recognize the power of your own mind, the gift that we were given with free will to choose for ourselves and use our mind to create along the lines of heavenly creation. That gift has effects in that it affects our belief system, which is really the structure of our worldview. And miracle working requires, it is a prerequisite that we fully realize the power of our thoughts, the power of the mind that was given us. And this is where most people didn't realize they had a choice. They thought their fears, that they were powerless in front of their fears. But in miracles, we learn that we can choose again, and both fear and miracles come from the thoughts that we choose. And so, in order to untangle this knot, we have to remember that we do not guard our thoughts. We leave our mind unguarded, wandering. Uh, you would never let your little children play by the freeway. or walk onto the freeway, you would protect them. In the same way, your mind, which is a very potent agent, should not be playing on the freeway of chaos and fear. You have to protect your mind, you have to guard it, because there is this situation that when you don't guard your mind, it winds up being a miscreator, which brings about we talked about the fundamental law. Well, this is the fundamental conflict, which is the reversal or an attempt to undo the fundamental law, is the fundamental conflict between using your mind for good or using it for no good. And by the way, using your mind for no good, it doesn't mean that people realize what they're doing. A lot of times people think that they're doing good. Example just came to me. Spare the rod and spoil the child is a teaching that you should use the rod to enforce discipline with the child. So people that follow that ethos, use the belt to discipline their children, think that they're doing it for their own good because they believe that that is the better way. But we now know that it uses fear as a teaching tool rather than love, and that the resolution of all our problems on earth rests entirely on the mastery through love. Ultimately, no, we didn't emphasize this during the review session, but no compromise is possible between perfect love, which is everything, and miscreations of illusions, which is nothing. Time has been given to us as a means of forgiveness, in which all compromise between everything and nothing can be given up. The Course teaches us when forgiveness is complete, time will come to an end, for there'll be nothing else that to learn. There'll be nothing else that will be needed. And so towards that end is the purpose for these sessions here. Let me invite you to the end of your journey of separation. This is the redefinition, Holy Spirit's redefinition of the meaning of the Last Judgment. It's a happy redefinition. It takes all the fear out of this ancient concept of the Last Judgment, which has been taught in a fearful sense. And the Holy Spirit has awaiting for us a much more hopeful and forgiving view of the Last Judgment. And we'll cover that in our next session. So I want to thank you all for your willingness to learn these fundamental laws and to understand how the conflicts are an effort to undo those fundamental laws, and the recognition that you have the power to choose differently. You're not a victim of the world you see. You have a choice in these matters. Then choose again, my friends. Choose love. Thank you, David, for your reading. Thank you all for your attention. We look forward to seeing you again real soon. Namaste.
Namaste. Bye.
Namaste.
Thank
Peace
you.
and love.
David W., thanks for your comments in the chat.